thousands of fast food workers strike. 430 of them are arrested. Here's the story from USA Today. Take a listen.
Protesters demanding better wages for fast food workers block traffic on the streets of New York and Detroit. Some handcuffed by police and led away during what labor organizers are calling acts of nonviolent civil disobedience.
They want 15, they want a union, they want to be organized, and and the McDonald's Corporation should allow that to happen immediately.
The nationwide Fight for $15 campaign has gained widespread attention, buoyed by President Barack Obama's recent push to get Congress to raise the minimum wage, currently $7.25 an hour.
We'll sit down all over this country.
Workers say the proposed wage increase would make a huge difference in their daily lives.
All we want to do is just take care of ourselves and our families without government assistance, without help from anybody. And these billion-dollar fast food companies are just don't want to give back.
Wait a minute. Okay, so this guy wants to be able to provide for his family without government assistance. So who is he begging to raise the minimum wage? The government? I think he's forgetting how short-sighted this protest is. Well, let's continue.
It means that I can actually provide my day-to-day basis, be able to provide for my son, pay rent on time, pay light bill on time.
Similar protests were planned in about 150.
All right, wait a minute. Talking about paying stuff on time, that doesn't make any sense at all. If you can pay the bills, you should be able to pay them on time. If you can't pay them on time because you don't have enough money, well, then you probably shouldn't be living where you're living. You can always downsize, you can always rent, you can always live in a smaller box, and you know, it's not like I'm heartless and saying, oh, you should just work harder. But the fact is that the majority of poor in this country work less than 15 hours a week combined. That's the entire household. So that's really not enough to raise a family or to have any sort of subsistence living. Let's continue with the video, though, from these minimum wage fast food workers who are protesting so that they can get double their wages. Here we go.
Cities nationwide. Maggie Mazzetti, Associated Press.
All right, so that's it. That's a scoop from the Associated Press and USA Today. They've got a little blurb about some of the information. 430 workers demonstrating for higher wages were arrested. Those included Representative Gwen Moore, a Democrat from Wisconsin, and she joined the fast food workers from New York to Chicago to Los Angeles who put down their burger flippers and picked up picket signs in a strike for $15 an hour minimum wages. The rallies included acts of civil disobedience, mostly blocking the streets. So this is where I split. I am way big a fan of them doing this. Like, yes, go ahead, protest in the streets and make a lot of noise and hold up your signs and tell the people what you want. This is very good. Peacefully disobeying orders to, move from the streets. All of this I think is great. Yes, peacefully disobey. That is doing good. But your message kind of sucks. The message of, oh, you should pay us double just because we're demanding it sucks. But at least you're starting the conversation. Change can't happen without confrontation. And these people are starting some agitation between them and the management. So, yeah, people are listening. They're taking notice. People like me hopefully will be able to redirect them and say, hey, guys, you should increase your skills. You should market yourselves better and negotiate with your employers so that you can make more money and earn it rather than demand it. Your employer is going to pay you what you're worth. And if you don't believe me, look at the McDonald's or the Walmart in North Dakota. Starting salaries are $17.50 an hour for cashier positions, for janitorial jobs. Don't believe me? Check it out. Go look it up for yourself. I have the link in a couple episodes past. But the reason is because that's what the employees there are worth. They're worth that because the market rate in North Dakota is so high, given that all those workers are extracting oil and natural gas, that they've got opportunity costs. They can be paid something much higher for another entry-level job, or they could go work at Walmart. Well, if Walmart wants their stores stocked and employees to help the customers, well, then they've got to pay comparable rates. So that's what people are worth. So if you think that you should be able to raise a family, drive a car, pay your rent, have a home, all on minimum wage salary, you've got another thing coming. I mean, does flipping burgers really warrant that sort of an income? Most people could just be easily replaced with automation and machinery. That's what's going to happen. And when these people demand $15 an hour minimum wage, they don't see it, but it's about to shoot themselves in the foot. They're asking government to put their employers in jail if they pay them any less. If they paid them, $10 an hour when the minimum wage is $15, that would be a pretty good increase for most people today. But it would be illegal for their employers to do so. The same as it's illegal for employers today to pay $6 an hour, $5 an hour to anyone who wants to sweep up floors, get some work experience, show up at a job, do some part-time work as a high school student or maybe even a middle school student. Why shouldn't the youth be able to be employed? A lot of people would argue that it would undercut those other workers that have no skills. Well, maybe you should get some skills. It's not impossible. There are free libraries everywhere. So, take some personal responsibility. That's my bottom line message, and it's not going to sit well with everybody. But that's the bottom line. You've got to take personal responsibility if you want to increase your station in life. It's not about demanding things from lords up on high. Oh, those politicians in Washington, they're looking out for me. No, they're not. They're looking to line their pocket and get the next vote, even if that means sending you to the unemployment line next year, next election cycle, because they don't care about what happens long term. Now, long term, it would be in your best interest to have no minimum wage. Just let that sink in for a minute. No minimum wage, meaning if someone does a job worth $1 an hour, you can do that. Now, today there exists jobs that are paid under minimum wage level, but they're not. They have to hide from the government. You can't have work experience that you can put on your resume saying that you were paid less than $7.25 or whatever the national minimum wage is. That would be great for a lot of students who want a leg up with their first real job. Say, look at all this, these hours of employment or these years of employment that I had working for the grocery store, stocking shelves, or pulling carts back. All of that, is it really worth $8 an hour? Unclear. But the work experience sure shows that you've got a work ethic, and that would be worth it in the end. I know I worked as a janitor before in the past, and was paid about what I was worth. It was $9 an hour, which is not the minimum wage at the time, but after being an independent contractor, you end up having to pay your own taxes. It ends up being less than minimum wage. So sometimes you get the worst end of the deal, even being paid more, because the tax man comes and gets you. Well, there's that. I was paid minimum wage again during a time as I worked at as a clerk at an accounting firm. Again, just a little over minimum wage, and that was, that's about what it's worth. What am I doing? Putting away papers, organizing stuff. How much can you pay a person like that? And I would have accepted being paid less than minimum wage if I were able to keep all the money. It would have been different. After being paid minimum wage, after all the taxes, it ends up only being $6 and change because the government has to take its share, right? And if you never file to get that money back, well, then you've lost a good chunk of your income. That was my problem, and I'd love to hear how other fast food workers and minimum wage employees are getting around it. Let's return to the story from USA Today. Quote, there has to be civil disobedience because workers don't see any other way to get $15 an hour and a union, says Kendall Fells, the organizing director of Fast Food Forward, a group backed financially by the Service Employees International Union, which organized Thursday's protests. There's a long history of this, from the civil rights movement to the farm workers movement. A number of fast food workers make close to the federal minimum wage of $7.25 an hour, or roughly $15,000 annually. Some say that is not a living wage, especially for workers who are supporting families. In a statement, McDonald's said, quote, "We believe that any minimum wage increase should be implemented over time so that the impact on small owners and small to medium businesses, like the ones who own and operate the majority of our restaurants, is manageable. Strikers began to gather early Thursday in more than 100 cities at outlets for major fast food chains from McDonald's to Wendy's to Burger King. Shortly after 11 a.m. Eastern Time on Thursday, police arrested 19 workers who sat down in the street outside of McDonald's in New York Times Square. The New York City Police Department said as many as several dozen striking workers were arrested in Detroit. In West Milwaukee, Moore, 62, a 5-term congresswoman, was arrested after she joined a street sit-in and refused to leave when police told demonstrators to move. West Milwaukee police say they arrested 25 others. She says, quote, "I take great pride in supporting Milwaukee workers as they risk arrest in pursuit of a brighter tomorrow for their families." But you know, these people, they don't see another option, and if they're going to choose something, thank goodness it's peaceful. If they can't choose the option of going to the library, picking up a book, and giving themselves an education, or, God forbid, going on the internet and getting any number of free educations provided by Ivy League universities, if they can't think of those things to do to improve their skills and market themselves better to their potential employers, well then, acts of civil disobedience, sitting in the street, that's one way to at least get their message across, that they don't feel they're being paid enough. But instead of sitting in the street, maybe they ought to be working. Just a thought. Burger King cashier Terrence Wise, age 35, who was arrested in Kansas City, Missouri, says he's demonstrating for future workers and for his 3 daughters, ages 12, 10, and 8. You know what? Pretty soon they should be working at Burger King, Terrence. You're 35. Move on. Get some skills. By the time you're 35, you should have had plenty of time in the real world to develop some marketable skills. And if you haven't, then go to the library. Go home. Go to your computer. Go to your smartphone. Go to your PSP. Go download an ebook. Okay? It's about time you increase your skills. And I'm not just saying this to pick on fast food workers. I work minimum wage myself. Okay? But it's in the past. You're supposed to start there. It's an entry-level position. It's low to no skills. They want to train you from you're basically brain dead to you can flip these burgers, you can take these orders. You know, if they could replace you with automated machines, they would, and they're going to. So get ready for it and get your skill levels up, man. There's got to be something you can do with those skills, maybe some customer service. There's always going to be a need for that, even in an automated world. Quote, "Tomorrow, I've got to move out of my house because I can't afford my rent," says Terrence Wise, the same 35-year-old we spoke about before. He's worked at Burger King for 10 years and earns $9.50 an hour. It's not 4 million CEOs, but 4 million fast food workers who keep these companies running. And he's right, that's true. But Terrence, you're replaceable. Don't you get that? The 4 CEOs don't. They're not replaceable. They are integral to the business decisions. They're making big-time decisions that impact all the workers and all the customers. You are not, and so you do not deserve the sort of compensation that such a high level of responsibility warrants. And he's saying, tomorrow I've got to move out of my house because I can't afford to pay rent. Well, whose fault is that? You had 3 kids. You've had the same job for 10 years working at Burger King. Okay, did you think that, like, I don't know, it doesn't say if he's a manager or not, but it sounds like at $9.50 an hour, he's probably not a manager. 10 years. Had no time to climb the ranks? No extra responsibilities that you jumped into? I mean, come on. And even at $15,000 a year, that is no way to raise 3 kids. Hopefully he's not the only wage earner in the family. But even if he were, isn't there some way he could work 2 jobs? Doesn't that happen sometimes where people say, gosh, I'm not making enough with one of these. I can't make ends meet. I better get another job. Did that ever occur to anyone? Working more? That's one way to make more income. In New York, more than 400 demonstrators gathered outside the Times Square McDonald's, and 14 men and women were arrested and accused of sitting in the street and blocking traffic. The National Council of Chain Restaurants, an industry trade group, took issue with the protest tactics. Quote, While it is common for labor unions to stage events in order to grab media attention, encouraging activities that put both restaurant workers and their customers in danger of physical harm is not only irresponsible, it's disturbing. Unions are calling it civil disobedience, and in reality, this choreographed activity is trespassing, and it's illegal. Wow. Rob Green, you're making a big fool of yourself by saying that. Rob Green, of course, of the National Council of Chain Restaurants. Of course it's illegal. Civil disobedience is always illegal. Doesn't seem like he gets it. Well, that's unfortunate because this labor dispute is going to continue whether the workers are heard or not. Hopefully, some of them are listening to Peace News and decide to pick up a book, take a second job, and increase their income. Take personal responsibility. So let's, the last thing I have to say about this fast food worker story is that I think a lot of the workers who are on strike, they're not very educated. Obviously, they're working low skill jobs, and they probably work a lot of hours, so they don't have time to study this stuff. But there's something called opportunity cost. There's market for labor, just as there is a market for cell phones or anything else. And what they don't realize is they exist on that market for labor, and if they increase their wages too high, if they say, Mr. Employer, I won't take a job, or you aren't allowed to hire me at less than $15 an hour, without knowing it, they're really they're ending up gutting their own jobs. So first of all, let's assume there's no such thing as automation and they have to be completely replaced by other workers. The business only makes so much money. They only take in so much, and they only get that money from their customers. It's not like government where they have this endless printing press where they could just make up whatever figures they want and hand out money. They're a business, so they've only got to pay out what they take in. They take in a certain amount. You double the expense for labor, which, by the way, is the most expensive fixed cost for any business. You double that expense, and they're going to have to cut some of their employees. Just a fact of life. You make increases one place, you're going to have to balance that out with a decrease somewhere else. Paying people more means paying fewer people. So these people who are demanding $15 an hour jobs, they're going to end up without a job. I mean, are they able to produce $15 an hour, $15 worth of product per hour? It's arguable whether or not they are. So this is the final thing I want to say. It's just they probably don't realize what they're doing, and I want to help them understand that they are part of this market for labor. There's supply and demand. You make the supply cost too high, and that demand is going to shrink. Just a fact of life. Sorry, I don't make the rules.